Godo is a character that isn't featured very much in the Berserk story. He appears in only a handful of chapters in Berserk. However, as is the case with Berserk, a single chapter can sometimes have a profound impact on readers and the characters involved, even when it stands alone. Godo is one of these characters that both acts as a mirror to Guts and a warning. And I dare say, without encountering Godo and listening to his crucial words, Guts could have ended up dramatically different to the one we see in the Fantasia arc. In chapter 48, Sparks from a Sword Tip, we see where Guts was for a year after departing from the Band of the Hawks. He was staying at Godo's house, basically freeloading off him, getting his sword and gear repaired. Guts asks the older man why he is up here all alone in the mountains, considering he is a blacksmith. But Godo replies somewhat dismissively, saying he isn't alone as he has a daughter, and the nearby hills harbour good ore for his work. Guts follows up by asking why he is a blacksmith and if he likes doing it. We learn that his family has all been blacksmiths since his great-grandfather's days, so it is only natural that he would follow in these footsteps. Regarding whether he likes what he does, Godo is unsure, never having really questioned it.
Before I could decide if I liked it or not, I hit the iron in front of me. After that, I was so busy trying to improve and craft better stuff that one day, I woke up an old man.
Now this says quite a lot already. When we do things that have been normal for us our entire life, we usually do not question them. Godo says he has been doing his craft ever since a young age, never actually reflecting on whether what he was doing was fulfilling him or not. When you live an isolated life, staying in your own lane, there's an abandonment of exploration and spontaneity. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. You can hone your skills on one singular thing and become, the master at it. By living this life, Godo became an exceptional blacksmith. That is a great achievement. However, there are some drawbacks to this approach. One day you will realize that time has passed significantly and all you've got to show for it is just one singular thing. This is illustrated when Godo says,
I was so busy trying to improve and craft better stuff that one day I woke up an old man.
It can easily cause dissatisfaction for a lot of individuals who live a life similar to Godo. As a consequence of sticking to one thing, you've lost out on what a lot of life has to offer. However, there has to be some element that keeps people engaged in doing the same thing every single day. For a lot of people, they keep working a mundane job because it pays the bills, and so that's why they show up every day. For Godo, he likes the sparks.
Sparks are nice. I get engulfed by them. It feels like my own life, for an instant, is springing into the air before my eyes.
Even though Godo is unsure whether he likes what he does or not, it is the sparks that appear with every hit that keep him alive. It is that very minor thing that helps Godo to keep on going. Similar to Guts with his sword, he doesn't know if he likes what he does, but he feels a sense of invigoration when he is on the battlefield with his steel. Guts sees his own sparks when he clashes steel with another. Guts ponders the nature of purpose. He is only where he is after hearing Griffith's perspective on it.
In the end, this is all there is for me. Dreams. Is this what a dream is to me? No, it's not a clear concrete destination like what Griffith said. It's not some lofty, glittering thing.
When one embarks on a journey to discover their purpose in life, it is crucial to recognize that the purpose is determined by the individual. Two people can possess entirely different purposes that may not intersect at all. For instance, Griffith embodies a lofty, grand vision that is distinctly defined, which is perfectly valid. However, it is not a necessity for everyone. In contrast, Guts does not resonate with this notion. Purpose can manifest in something as straightforward as Godo dedicating himself to caring for his daughter while he practices his craft as a blacksmith. Regardless of what it entails, the significance of one's purpose is ultimately a personal matter, and it's natural to struggle with it. Now I actually think the searching and working towards a purpose is just as commendable. In the case of Guts, it's clear that at this moment he views his sword as his beacon. Godo has his blacksmithing, Guts has his sword. Historically, Guts has fought under others. However, by the end of his reflections, he concludes that he will fight for himself, not Griffith or anyone else. This way, he has a sense of control over his life, believing that this is his purpose. But he will eventually come to realize that his understanding of purpose may evolve beyond his initial beliefs. This is also an important consideration. Purpose is not always fixed. It can transform over time, as life experiences and changing beliefs can reshape individuals' interpretations of what purpose signifies to them. When chapter 129, Cracks in the Blade, arrives, Some significant events have happened since chapter 48. We had the Eclipse and the Lost Children chapters, and so here we are, after 2 years of a revenge mission motivated by the events of the Eclipse. Guts returns to Godo's home, where his daughter Erika first spots the Black Swordsman. But the picture is something she doesn't recognize, a large dark silhouette that instantly makes Erika fearful. However, when she sees the contrastingly calmer face of Guts, she is disarmed as he says,
Yo, you got a bit taller, didn't you?
Guts, on a surface level, comes across as menacing and a force of darkness. But in reality, when you get closer to him, you will come to know that he is a more friendly individual than what his appearance may indicate. But I think on a deeper level, this image of him is to illustrate the change in Guts. Erika doesn't recognize him until he speaks, and what's more is that she is afraid of Guts' image, where previously she wasn't. Together they return to Godo's mill, where Rickett appears to have picked up blacksmithing. When Rickett and Guts see each other, Guts comments on the fact that Rickett looks a lot stronger. Rickett, on the other hand, is surprised to see Guts and wants to question him on why he disappeared for 2 years. But Guts cuts Rickett off, as he is more concerned about Casca. He tells Guts that Casca has disappeared. Hearing this, Guts grabs Rickett, and with a distressing expression displayed on his face, demands an explanation. After Erika takes the blame and tells the story of how Casca vanished, Guts gets even angrier, scrutinizing both of them for neglecting Casca. But for as young as she is, Erika actually speaks true here, replying,
What about what you did? You went and left her here, and then you went off somewhere for 2 years.
This will be expanded upon in his conversation with Godo, but Erika points out the hypocrisy in Guts being angry at her and Rickett. Both of them are young and do not hold the same amount of formidable strength as Guts does. But there is a reason why Rickett cannot leave and search for Casca, and that is because of Godo. There is a genuine look of worry on Guts' face when he sees the old man looking unwell in his bed. Godo says he is dying of old age and demands to take a look at Guts' gear.
Blade nicks, blood rust, bends. Shouldn't be this way even after 10 years.
The detail where Godo says that the sword shouldn't look like what it does even after 10 years is not something to overlook. It means that Guts, at the very least, is putting in 6 times the amount of use with his sword. This illustrates that every single day for 2 years, Guts was likely swinging and damaging his sword. This shines a light on Guts' mental state during these 2 years. Only a man possessed by deep emotions is capable of doing these actions daily for 2 years. This also gives a chance for Godo, Guts and the audience to reflect upon Guts' recent behaviour. Godo follows up by saying the war Guts is raging against the apostles is not a great idea, as he is doing it for retaliation, for revenge. He points out that what Guts is doing is not fueled by an admirable idea. It is purely done out of selfishness. In fact, he was putting his life on the line and potentially putting others in danger. Nothing was achieved. When Godo says,
Listen, why not run away? From war, from hatred.
Guts immediately replies,
What?
Guts is perplexed by Godo's words. How could he possibly do that?
The thing about hatred, it's a place where people who can look sorrow in the eye without wavering run off to. Even more than a blood-rusted sword, vengeance is something you soak and sharpen in blood. You sink the blade called your heart deeper into blood in order to fix the nicks called sorrow. The more you sharpen, the more it rusts, so you sharpen it again. In the end, all that's left is a pile of rust and scraps.
Godo can see right through Guts. Perhaps he sees himself in him. Here he points out that Guts is afraid of facing sadness, telling Guts that the more he continues down this dark path, the more it will take a toll on him. One day you will no longer resemble anything you once used to be. You will become ugly, and all that remains of your old self will be pieces of you, shattered on the ground, that are beyond repair. Guts knows Godo is speaking truthfully, but he doesn't want to accept it, as he is uncomfortable with confronting the idea that perhaps the past 2 years were a mistake. He brushes it off by joking.
You're telling me to become a blacksmith or something?
Godo replies,
I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to. You've got some huge nicks in your heart. Damn cracks called fear, running all through it.
Guts becomes defensive, asserting that Godo doesn't understand what he has been through, that he has endured greater suffering than Godo himself. In the close-up shot, we observe the anguish etched on Guts' face, revealing a haunting expression shaped by his experience. He expresses his deep-seated emotions to Godo, conveying the profound loss he felt after the eclipse, during which he lost everyone dear to him. These individuals were irreplaceable to Guts. It is at this point that Godo highlights the flawed nature of Guts' perspective. You abandoned those irreplaceable things. You went alone. On that day 2 years ago, in your hopeless suffering, you left the last irreplaceable things you had and went by yourself. When faced with life's tragedies and sufferings, it is very easy to get pulled into the dark side yourself. It takes a lot of mental strength and emotional intelligence to maintain a positive attitude. We see this in the example of Guts post-eclipse. He hungers for his justice, and thus goes on a revenge path to get back at all the suffering he has been subjected to, and for the memory of those who were lost to him. But of course, this is detrimental not only to the person themselves, but everyone else around them, even those that they care about. The cracks in the blade metaphor symbolizes this by showing that eventually, with enough wear and tear, destruction will inevitably happen. People need to understand what they are jeopardizing by engaging in self-destructive behavior. In the case of Guts, Godo points out to him that he left behind the most valuable thing to him in the name of this revenge mission. You would think he would do his utmost to protect the last thing he deemed irreplaceable to him, when in fact, he did actions that only contribute to the potential loss of that very last precious thing. He was blinded by rage and was so consumed by despair that he truly thought he had nothing, when in reality, that is just not true. Guts' decision only made this situation worse. Nothing positive was achieved, and Casca has gone missing. This is often the case in these scenarios. People only contribute to their own suffering. You were right beside those irreplaceable things, yet you couldn't bear to immerse yourself together in sorrow with them. So instead, you ran away so that your own malice could burn inside you. I think a lot of people assume that Guts, because he wields a giant-ass sword and kills demons 10 times the size of him, that he is strong. That is true, but that is just one example of strength. An equally valid interpretation of what constitutes strength, in my opinion, is the ability to be emotionally open. In this respect, Guts is weak. He fled from his sorrow rather than immersing himself in it. Although engaging with his pain would have been painful, it would have brought a swifter healing process than the path he ultimately chose. By avoiding his emotions beside the last irreplaceable thing, he became selfish, causing destruction wherever he found himself. The last words Godo says to Guts in this scene are perhaps the most haunting, especially for Guts, as we see him listening without conjuring up a smart joke to come back at him with. You're like a drawn sword on the battlefield, one with countless nicks, soaked in blood and rusting, with a lethal crack in it, a sword that's begun to break. This exchange serves as a warning message to Guts, emphasizing that Guts ought to reconsider turning around on this path he is currently on. Although he is damaged, like his sword, he is not beyond repair. However, he must act now. As previously said, he will inevitably become nothing more than a mere pile of rust and scraps, where there is no longer any hope. In my view, this conversation with Godo ignited the idea for Guts to really consider his priorities. As we witness Guts in the Fantasia arc, he appears as a more reflective and mature individual, suggesting that he has indeed heeded Godo's advice. In the chapter where Guts departs from Godo, though he is on his last legs, he manages to summon the strength to stand up, as he decides to help Guts out and repair the Dragon Slayer sword. When talking to Rickett, Godo confesses that Erica is not biologically his daughter. She is an orphan who lost her family in the 100-Year War. Godo found her in a burned out house, crying by herself, and he felt compelled to take her in and raise her. Godo reflects, "It weren't like me at all. It let me who'd known nothing but steel since the day I was born feel pretty, well, human." As we learned in Godo's first appearance, his whole life revolved around blacksmithing, but it's only till he encounters something new that he feels like he's accomplished something of goodness. This is perhaps why Godo may feel some regret in his life, because most of it was a neglect of doing things that feel human to him. He only discovered this later on in life, and so I feel like it would be natural to see someone like Godo feel sorrowful, only having discovered this at an older age. This is why he pushes for Guts to let go of hate and strive for love. Godo discovered this later than he would have liked, but it's better to have found it than not at all. A good sword, even if it rusts and dulls, has good steel that never rusts left over in the wick. That steel's the ultimate steel, even if it cracks. If you return it to the fire, it's sure to be reborn. This is a symbol for Guts' character journey. He, like his sword, is cracking at the edges and becoming blunt. That will inevitably get destroyed after enough time. However, no matter how damaged the person or thing is, there are still qualities of goodness, and if you return it to the fire, i.e. if you heal, you will be reforged. Just because you've fallen low doesn't mean you will not rise again. Godo gives this to Guts in the form of his sword and also his wisdom as a push in the right direction. Another thing I think about this is the crack metaphor could be to symbolize Guts' heart shining through his tough and dark persona he has been wearing ever since the eclipse, accepting Puck as a companion and his treatment of Jill at the end of the Lost Children chapters. It illustrates that Guts is not too far gone yet. On the other hand, the metaphor could be used to show the damage that Guts is inflicting upon himself. Eventually, the cracks would become too severe and bring about obliteration, where repair is no longer an option, and changed forever.
Tell this to that fool. Don't turn out like me.
When we are older, we have faced many of life's struggles. We have suffered things that we know how to avoid because of the knowledge and wisdom we possess as a result of that experience. The best thing to do is to gift that knowledge to those who need it. So Godo can relate to Guts' behaviour of shutting yourself out from others and becoming isolated. Godo knows Guts will come to regret it if he continues down the dark path, because Godo has lived that. And this message he wants to tell Guts is out of the goodness of his own heart. This path only leads to more misery. Guts then departs from Godo and they do not see each other again, but the impact Godo has had on Guts' life is something Guts will carry with him. We see when he returns in the next arc that he briefly mourns for Godo upon seeing his headstone. My main takeaway from Godo's character in the story is that every individual in the world needs to possess at least one aspect of their life that provides them with a good reason to get up each morning. The significance of this aspect, whether great or small, is inconsequential, and the views of others regarding it hold no importance. We all need something to tell us that it's worth continuing, no matter how dark it gets. Godo perceives the dark trajectory that Guts is embarking upon and cautions him against becoming like himself, isolated from a lot of connections and leading a solitary existence. Let go of hate and strive for love. In spite of all the suffering Guts has endured and the many losses he has experienced, he still has elements in his life that are worthy of fighting for. Casca is worthy of fighting for. When we fast forward to the man we see in Elfhelm, when Casca is undergoing her process of curing her mind, we see a man with people around him who care about him. These people are only around because Guts started to let people in again. After experiencing his childhood and the eclipse, the Black Swordsman version of him would never open his heart again. But the one in Fantasia is one that has finally let love take focus over hatred. Guts has unlocked true strength. I can't help but think about Kentaro Miura when dissecting Godo's character and his message. After all, artists tend to put elements in their art that are a reflection of themselves. So this got me speculating a little bit. As you may or may not know, Miura led a very private life. He wasn't married and he had no kids. He did though have his best friend, Mori, who now continues Berserk. During the earlier stages of Berserk, most of his days were spent in his home working on his craft. He was a night owl working through the night. He had a pretty intense routine, but around the 2010s he would slow down and change up his routine, which I think sort of parallels Godo finding Erica and discovering a new way to go about life. All in all, there just isn't much information about Kentaro. I mean, there's a reason why there's like only a handful of images and one single video that I keep showing in these videos. It's because that's all there is. He is kind of a mystery, and that's why I think if you look into his work, that's where you can maybe learn more about him. I think perhaps Godo is a reflection of Miura and how much of his life he had been dedicating to his manga. Maybe he feels that what he was doing was not entirely what he should be doing, potentially expressing regret for giving so much of his life to this thing he started. Now this is all my speculation, it's just what I kind of picked up from Godo's presence in this story. Nevertheless, one thing to take away from Godo is that people should understand the importance of acknowledging that what you have in your life is valuable. Sometimes events can happen where it gets clouded. Guts thought he lost everything after the eclipse, and it felt like it was his duty to go on this revenge quest, and if he didn't, then to him it would be a betrayal of the memory of those lost. Godo helps shine a light on Guts' flawed mentality, which I would say pushed Guts to a better path, one that has less hate and more love.